to the March 12th, 2025 meeting of the Bicycle Advisory Committee and the Pedestrian Advisory Committee. We are honored to have County Manager Mr. Mark Schwartz with us today. And I think what we'll do, given that every moment is precious with Mark, we are going to skip introductions and dive right into a discussion. However, when you speak, it's good if you can say who you are and which committee you're with. And I should say I'm Cynthia Palmer. I am with the Bicycle Advisory Committee, and we have here Eric. You want to say hi?
Okay, I'm Eric Goodman, and I'm the acting chair of the Pedestrian Advisory Committee and also a member of the Bicycle Advisory Committee. Thanks. And let's see, I'll look across my screen, Pamela, if you want to introduce yourself.
Oh, I didn't think we were going to do that. Pam Van Hine, I'm the PAC recording secretary.
All right, why don't we dive right in? We sent Mr. Schwartz a 4-page letter outlining some of our initial concerns and issues, and maybe that can serve as an outline for at least the beginning of this discussion. So welcome, Mark. We are so thrilled to have you here, and we look forward to hearing your thoughts on our 8 or more issues that we sent you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks, Cynthia. Also, thanks to Eric. What's this acting chair stuff, Eric?
Well, I was actually the vice chair, and I have been acting. Well, the hope is that at some point in the near future that we have a great volunteer that takes the chair role. I think I've probably had more than enough of my time, both the first time as the chair and the second time. Okay. So I really would like to give the opportunity to others to set the agenda and provide their great input.
Okay, well, so much for my idea of making a chair for life, but we'll have to talk about that some other time.
Okay.
So first I wanted to start off with, it's been long overdue for me to show up here. I've had some off and on conversations with Cynthia and Eric on a few things and a few of the others of you. And again, want to thank you all for the time you take. And I know that every single one of you believe passionately that whether it happens to be bicycling or pedestrian activities, and I also have a few other advisory groups that advise me that you believe very strongly that Arlington is a great place for that. And I do read all the comments that you send me all the time, and I take them all with the best of intent. And I think there's a lot of good things that you've laid out. I don't think I've ever had the opportunity to speak to you all sort of as a joint group and give you a few thoughts. And I'm going to really try very hard not to talk very much, because if it's going to be a discussion, we need to be able to have a back and forth. And my goal is not necessarily to have us agree on everything, but for me to get a really good sense of some of the thoughts behind the points that you make, and to give you a sense of how I think a little bit about these advisory groups, and more broadly about the role of citizen and resident participation. I think that's really a good place to start. So before I get into the specifics of the 8 points that you raised, interestingly for me, and I've worked with the county for 20 years. Before that, I was on advisory committees appointed by the county board. When I got here, it was really sort of an interesting, and I'm not going to call it an anomaly, but the bicycle, the BAC, the PAC, and the TAC, where I went up to somebody when I was here after a couple of years and I said, what are these? What are they? They seem to be not, it's like from Sesame Street. One of these isn't quite like the others, because the county board has 50 advisory commissions and committees that they appoint. And I got a little bit of a history lesson, but I'm sure there are some people here. I see a few people who've been longtime members who will know a lot more than I would about the history, about the formation of these groups. But I view both of your groups as an opportunity to provide me your advice to me about how I can go about doing my work and doing a better job of it. I have a little bit of a bias having been on an advisory commission before. And this really gets, I think, to the first 2 points you raised in your letters about what I view as a really good way for you to be able to provide me advice. And for me, just so you know, I do not, with all the portfolio that the Department of Environmental Services have and the transportation staff, with about somewhere between about a $1.5 billion worth of projects, 200 capital projects, and 15 staff. You know, I spend no time getting involved in the project formulation on the specifics of what's going on, but I do spend a lot of time getting briefed on sort of what the program that's been put together by transportation staff. And whenever I'm sitting with them, I'll ask them a whole series of questions based on, I'll say, common sense criteria. Why this rather than that? What are the criteria used in ranking projects? I really don't get into offering my advice or suggestions about specifics. And I know that that's been a pain point for all of you because, as you say, your role has probably changed over the last period of time. And I think that you've probably heard a lot from staff about how they're much more, I don't say I'm in complete agreement, but I'm in mostly agreement about the role that you could play rather than getting involved in sort of the project formulation. And I don't want to state your views for you, but from my perspective, hearing from you about the overall criteria that could be used, about what kinds of projects we have, as opposed to specific comments about what should go into a specific project up front, and then comments about once the project's staff has done their work, things that you find that are good about them or bad about them. And I would look at that as sort of trying to provide a balance and making choices among the various projects, what kind of criteria you should use, and trade-offs between projects. Because my job really at the end of the day, I have to spend a lot of time making trade-offs. I never really get bad ideas that come to me. I get way too many good ideas and I have to make choices among them. And so for me, that is something that I really value, and I would hope that you're able to do that. That doesn't take away, I think, from some of the things you've been able to do when projects come up and there's ideas that come up and you offer comments, like, for example, on what happened on Route 1 and some of the more recent projects. But for me, you know, I think that taking more of an approach where you look at the criteria as opposed to the specifics of a project, I find to be most helpful. So you asked me what I found to be most helpful, and that is sort of where I am on that. And I'm happy to talk about what that means on a practical level. And also, we spent a lot of time about 6 years ago coming up with our 6-step public engagement guide about how to do things. I think that, you know, you have a role to play in that too. I really wanted to sort of skip to another point you made in your letter, because I actually really would also want to hear from you, rather than you being reacting to projects that come to you. And you did this, I think, really well in your letter when you're talking about how we're going to do the future of transportation analysis. I wanted to give you a couple of examples of places where I feel like you could really be a force multiplier for me, and I hope for staff. I'm going to pick one subject, which was near and dear to my heart, having to do with sidewalks. It was your fourth item on your list. I frankly think the way the county has done sidewalks for the last 25 or 30 years is doesn't make a lot of sense. And I live not too far from the Ballston corridor, and I curse every time I walk up and down the sidewalks. I think whatever the thinking was at the time when site plans were built in the 1980s, that the maintenance of those sidewalks would belong to the building owners, has proved to be a colossal failure. I mean, I don't know. I haven't actually found anybody who can explain to me the logic behind that. And I really would like your ideas on how we could move, at least prospectively, towards something that talks about having a county obligation to maintain those rights of way prospectively. Going back and looking at all the old site plans is going to be a real challenge, but I've never understood why it is we actually expect building owners who have they have someone who runs a building, why the person who's in the superintendent's office of a building is actually going to care about the sidewalk in front of their building. I didn't understand the logic behind that. So I want to have more conversations about that. Very interested in your ideas on, like I said, on that. Very interested in your ideas about the MTP refresh, and also interested in your ideas about how the two of your groups work together, because I've always been taking a multimodal approach to these things, and I know that the BAC and PAC do meet together fairly often. But I've been toying with the idea, not right now, but of seeing if we might want to move to more of a multimodal kind of advisory group. But those are just a few of my thoughts right off the top of my head. I'm happy to talk about snow and ice and standards and budget. I just spent a long time preparing a budget, talking about existential dread coming from all the actions from across the river and what it's going to do to our plans and how we're going to approach that. But I've talked long enough. I'm going to turn it back to, I guess, to you, Cynthia or Eric, and I'm happy to take questions. I won't even screen them in advance, so I won't be able to ignore the hard ones.
Well, at this point, I don't see anybody has their hand up. There were a couple folks before. I don't know if we want to. I think Jim Feaster has his hand up right now.
I'm sorry, I got to go. Just kidding.
All right.
Well, let me turn the. It says my video is not working. That's probably a good thing. Come to
Jim,
think
are
of
you
it.
on your bike at the?
I am not.
Is that why your video's not on?
Oh, there it is. Okay, now I've done it again. Anyway, no, your comment on the sidewalk, I think we agree with. And my only other one is that with respect to the sidewalks is that I believe that there are streets in the county without sidewalks or sidewalks that need repair, whose importance exceeds that the wishes of the property owners who live on those sidewalks. And I would like to see there are places without sidewalks, or there are places in which the crossings are important for students or for the elderly or for people going to work, to transportation. And the importance of those exceeds the wishes of those neighbors and property owners who have a stronger voice in what happens to those sidewalks. But I also agree with with what you said about the maintenance of the sidewalks by the ownership of the buildings. It varies. The quality of the sidewalks vary, and if there could be a uniform approach that did not require the wishes of the building owners.
But so first off, it's great to see you again, Jim. I miss seeing you every morning, but you know, I've been able to survive. But I did want to, specifically on this question about sidewalks. You would have a longer memory than I would, but I don't think at any point a county board has directed staff to put together an overall sidewalk plan for the county, because there's this tension between. I mean, I agree with you. In the neighborhood that you and I used to share in Ashton Heights, there are some places that are very proximate to metro stations with no sidewalks. And it really doesn't make sense. That runs headlong into what's now called ARLNAC, or the Neighborhood Conservation Program, where there was an effort to give agency to civic associations and neighbors to make decisions about what happened in their neighborhood. I frankly think those two approaches are not reconcilable in certain places in the county. And as much as it's going to upset certain people, I think that is the kind of policy issue that I would appreciate you weighing in on and saying maybe perhaps in certain areas, or we get tasked as a staff with coming up with a proposal to fill out the rest of our sidewalk infrastructure in a way that might limit the kind of individual veto power. I think that would be a very tough issue to take on. But frankly, I think that, it's an obligation, and it's not known all that well, but that most people's front lawns, that front part is actually county right of way anyway. So yeah, that's something I would really welcome to hear from you about, because I think it's sort of, at the end of the day, if we're going to be pedestrian friendly and frankly, make it easier for people to use transportation, that has been a obvious missing piece in what's been going on.
Amen.
All right. Looks like Andrew Martin has his hand up.
Hey, thanks. I guess I'll kind of continue on that theme. So like the county just released kind of the updated bicycle comfort map, kind of based off of
Right.
Quite a bit of like metrics and then kind of how they were merged together, along with opinion. But similarly, you could potentially do something bike or pedestrian related, right? So like, is the sidewalk, right up against a 40-mile-an-hour road? I'm thinking one that I was running along today, George Mason, some stretches of North George Mason, like across from Lubber Run, right? You're right up there next to traffic. So even though there's a sidewalk, it's not necessarily kind of the most comfortable experience. Whereas some other places, I'm thinking maybe like North Oakland, there north of Pershing, right? No sidewalk, but a pretty important, at least for me when I'm walking to Virginia Square Metro Station, pedestrian route, like if you're coming from Route 50 up to Virginia Square. So just kind of maybe some opportunity of like, let's put on a map of what are the comfort levels and infrastructure states of sidewalks around the county, and some of the potential planning that can come from that, and kind of the different ways of merging that information.
Yeah, and I appreciate what you had to say, Andrew. It's been a while since I've been running the last couple of years, but I used to run that stretch on George Mason. I gave up because my face used to get lacerated by the bushes hanging over the sidewalks, which is sort of a separate question. I agree with you. I mean, I'm not too far from that stretch of Oakland Street where about 10 years ago or 8 years ago, there was an effort through the neighborhood conservation program to do it and was voted down. We actually are going to be doing one, I think it's one and then a second block between 5th Street up towards Wilson Boulevard, finally as a separate program, not through the neighborhood conservation program. So I think that's the right thing to do. But our mapping capabilities, we have some really great maps. You all know this better than I do. The bike comfort map, and then also the sidewalk assessment. We actually posted that online, I think, within the past year, that talks about where all the sidewalks are and what their condition is. And, I can't see, you probably know more than I do, I hope, about what the status of our maps are that talk about bike infrastructure writ large. In other words, where protected bike lanes are and other things, as opposed to what's on the bike map itself. But you probably know more about that. But I think that's a good suggestion.
Thanks. I'm actually going to call on myself here. So I wanted to kind of get back to our number one item here, and just wanted to kind of mention, sort of stepping back. I think you've given us some good specifics to think about, but really our role has evolved in a way that I think I don't think very much filters down through your staff to us. Certainly, we've been asked to have some engagement with the new master transportation plan, but just looking back over the last few years, a lot of times we've had to kind of sort of try to pull weeds to get something to discuss, because those the items like you've just mentioned there haven't really filtered down to us. The other thing, just one other thing to kind of add to that, certainly, as far as projects go, we don't want to overburden your project managers to have them potentially come to all of our meetings like they did before. I think that in a sense was difficult, and it has been more difficult to do both your multi-point engagement plan and do this. But it would be good to potentially have some way to engage groups as well as individuals. I think you're getting a lot of information that's coming through with some of these public engagements that do give sort of new voices, but at the same time, I'm not sure a lot of these folks may have not had experience kind of seeing some of the things they've seen in the past that a group can sometimes sort of put together. These are some things that we would like this project to aspire to, or these are, as opposed to kind of answering, maybe a half a dozen questions or a dozen questions on an online engagement, or potentially an engagement on site. So
Yeah,
thank you.
Eric, I understand that, and it's, it strikes me as awkward at best for me to say that I don't want to hear from you if you have specific suggestions about things. Related to that, though, is that you form this advisory role, and I think we've seen it on the future of transportation, or whatever we're going to be calling the MTP update, where there's like 14 different advisory groups sitting there offering their views on things. And so I think there is a role for groups to come in and make suggestions, but without limiting the value of what BAC and PAC could do. There's a whole bunch of other groups out there that want to do the same thing, which is to offer their views about, sort of at a very granular level. So again, that's my bias. And I also, when I worked on a county board advisory commission on fiscal affairs, what would happen is we would get the budget handed to us, and we used to, grind our teeth saying, staff spent all this time and they've handed us a product, and we haven't been able to get input into the specifics of it. But that is sort of what staff's responsibility is. I want you to second guess us and question us, but when it comes to the actual sort of getting into the mechanics of formulating, the actual plans, I think that's a little bit more challenging. I'm not sure that's exactly what you were saying. The input, we always will be seeking input from groups. But I got to tell you, at the end of the day, I really do think the strength of the BAC and the PAC is going to be looking at what kind of standards we should have, what kind of criteria should be used in making trade-offs, what big issues, like I mentioned on sidewalks. There's another set of issues also about, what we should be doing more broadly with new technologies on bicycles and how that might be integrated into our plans, or those dreaded things that I want to throw in the river, those scooters and stuff like that. So there's plenty of space for you to offer comments that I would find helpful. But again, I'm never going to say no to something you want to do. It's just a matter of staff availability.
Okay. Cynthia, I think you're next.
Yeah, and my questions were in a similar vein to yours, Eric. That often we don't have the information to comment. When we do find out about things, it's kind of too late. So it sets up an adversarial relationship with the county because we're disappointed because sometimes projects are either a waste of money or more often just don't feel safe. And yet we're told the project is done, whether it's Lynn Lee at the intersection of death or just a number of projects that have been completed and we have not been informed until it's too late. So we will pipe up when we can, but oftentimes it's not sort of timely because the expenditure, the planning has already been done. So I mean, that's a question, sort of
Right.
what role you see for community input, because right now, um, Department of Environmental Services is getting the hyper local from the surveys and the I mean, not this, from the open houses, and then they're getting the broad, these survey questions that, do you like the aesthetics of this bridge or that bridge or whatever, and they're not hearing from the transportation, the active transportation community who are walking, I mean, the mobility sector is not represented in the input the way it could be. And I have been on BAC in close coordination with PAC for long enough to have seen how we used to, when there was a project that was of critical significance to bicyclists or walkers, the staff used to come and roll out the maps, and we'd all weigh in, and that's no longer the case. I realize that everyone's busy. I'm working at midnight like most nights, especially right now. Things are really, really rough. So my empathy for all those who say they're just struggling and they can't sort of listen to anything else. But at the same time, I feel like there's a structural deficit here that we do offer loads of, I mean, just free labor and huge commitment to safety on the roads. And it's not clear. I mean, you said sort of you're happy to explain what it means practically, but we're still struck like that we're excluded from DES, what a rule really is. And that's still not resolved in my head.
Well, and I know you laid that out in your letter, Cynthia, and I understand what you're saying. You asked me what I would find to be the most helpful as county manager, and I think I told you. So, I also like to deal with specific examples, and I think you did talk about the intersection of death or intersection of doom or whatever. I think there's a lot of advocacy that came from individuals that are on these groups and also from outside groups that did sway what the result was. So I'm not sure I'm not saying I disagree with you, but I'm not sure I quite agree with you that the input that comes from individuals or or groups is somehow not factored into what we do. But again, it's because you asked me what I would find to be most useful. I think that if you think safety is being ignored as a matter of course in a whole range of projects, like I said, we've got hundreds of projects. I'd like to know systemically what you think the challenge is, what pieces of the safety hierarchy are being ignored, so that I can pay attention to that as an overall kind of approach and give direction on that. And I think that should clear up these issues with specific cases. I'm not saying that you're wrong. I would just need to know specifically what kinds of error, and that's, if you want to identify them tonight or send me a note saying, for example, in all the bicycle projects, the county is just basically, county staff's out to lunch, doesn't understand that bicycles have two wheels. I'm being hyperbolic to make a point. I would like to know that because everything that I see, I'm getting briefed by staff who say that we've done this, this, and this. And I don't have enough knowledge, substantive knowledge, to know sometimes about what kinds of trends there are in the field to know to ask those questions.
So to direct it, you mentioned that you'd like to see us working sort of at the bigger level on standards. That is something we have been wanting very much,
Right.
to have standards for design, for construction, for maintenance, both for bicycle infrastructure and for pedestrian facilities. And if the county is interested in working with us in communicating over standards, this is something we have been asking for and would love to engage in. So, if there's some role for BAC and PAC with regard to standards, that's again an area of great interest.
Right. So I really want to know that. I mean, once you get past all the acronym soup, which is ASHTO, NACTO, MUTGOOD, ADA, MOUSE, whatever it is, if there are things that we're just not thinking about, please let me know. I mean, that is the space I want you to play in. That would be really, really helpful to say that pretty much we're missing some overall standards, as opposed to saying, well, we got the design on this specific project, and we think that if you'd done a little bit more here, a little less there. If I know what the standards are up front, then that saves everybody a lot of time. I don't consider it necessarily to be the most efficient use of your time to get into all the specific projects, but it may be necessary. But I'm dying to get, your view on standards. All right, David, you've been waiting patiently. You're number one.
Okay, well, thank you. I appreciate County Manager Schwartz being here. And I'm a regular cyclist throughout the county. And I applaud every time there's a new bike lane, particularly a new protected bike lane. I think that's great. But a regular source of frustration is when there are vehicles parked in the bike lane and they block passage. And in some particular cases, it creates a safety issue for me personally, and obviously I can project for others as well. So I was just wondering what you think or what you think might be the best way to get at that issue or to try to resolve that issue. Be curious, what your thoughts might be.
Somebody's going to think I planted you in the audience to ask me that question, because when I drive to work, I come down Clarendon Boulevard every morning, and I swear to God, some of the words that come out of my mouth, I don't know they existed. When I see cars and delivery trucks blocking bike lanes, the simple fact is, and if anybody tells you otherwise, they're making it up. We do not have the enforcement staff, whether public safety aides or our police officers, to keep up with what is, I think in some ways, I don't understand, when a lot of our street infrastructure was put together, where people thought people were going to make deliveries. So you got these delivery trucks parked in these bike lanes, and I'm a bicyclist too. You have no choice but to stop your bike and get off it and sort of walk to protect your life. We don't have the staff to do that. So what I'm spending a lot of time on, and I wrote about this in the proposed budget, is we're going to be making a big push to use technology. I'll give you an example. You've gone to other cities where you've seen this. I really want to move to a system where we can have we are not required to have a written ticket placed on the windshield of a vehicle in order to charge them with violating a traffic provision. We have the authority from the Commonwealth to do that. We don't have the technology to do that, but we're doing a rebid on our park mobile technology, and we want to move to a technology answer that allows us to enforce residential parking and other things literally by driving by with a camera. But that's a couple of years away. And I'm very focused on making sure we get there. I actually also would love it if BAC and PAC sent me a note saying how the county board needs to work down in Richmond to get more authority to put more cameras out there that could take pictures of people who are run through stop signs. Right now, we can only do red light cameras and speed cameras in school zones. And I get a lot of feedback from the community about sometimes how there's bias, perhaps, which I don't agree with, but bias in the way human beings enforce these rules. There's a lot of solutions out there. And my daughter lived in Pittsburgh. Every city vehicle had a camera on it and was like, and we're not doing this to get the revenue. I want to be clear about that. We're doing this so people follow through and do, respect those bike lanes. And at the end of the day, even when we do that, David, I hate to say it, some businesses don't care. They'll
Right.
just park there, and that's just the price of doing business. But having said that, we really haven't done a good job at all of just sort of doing the basics because we don't have the people. And, our police department's missing a whole bunch of staff, but it drives me bonkers because I was just going to say, the bike lane, when you get off, when you're coming from at the intersection of Wilson and George Mason and you want to go into Ballston, you can get up a good head of speed coming down that hill, and then you got to go back up. If there's a car parked in that bike lane, you should hear me. My life is at risk, and that just drives me crazy. So I completely agree with you. There's some solutions there. I'd like to know maybe if you all looked at what other cities or counties are doing. I'm open to suggestions on, how we can improve that.
Well, yeah, thanks. Where I see it often is, well, in many places, but for me, it's coming up Wilson through Clarendon. There's a great new bike lane past the post office, and right there, the delivery trucks, the food service trucks, they always park in that bike lane there. And that's kind of an uphill stretch. And sometimes you have to veer out right into Wilson. But you're right. I mean, if you have to get off, you have to get off your bike. So
yeah, those are really tough stretches. And that, like Fairfax Drive coming in the other direction, heading from like George Mason towards Ballston, that's a minefield.
Right. All right. Well, thank you.
Thanks, David.
I think Aaron Schutz is next.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Mr. Schwartz, for being here. I live in Lyon Park, work at Yorktown, bike there most of the time. So yes, I get deterred by lots of things in my bike lane all the time, sometimes even cop cars parking there. So
yes, and that's a separate pet peeve, but we'll have to see what we can do about that.
But thanks for expressing your mutual frustration. I was glad to know we got somebody at the top that bikes and walks around and has the same issues. And I'm also on the Neighborhood Complete Streets Commission, helping to vote and work on getting that Oakland sidewalk in. So
great, thank you very much.
Yeah, excited about that. So I've been in like SPRC meetings stuff the last decade or so. And then I'm on the new MTP thing. Staff's been doing great on the outreach there. I know Cynthia's got real issues about what's been done, but I think they're doing a great job trying to involve a huge cross set. But one thing that I'm just curious about your opinion, a lot of the county staff, fantastic people, doing great work, but they're not like us old guys who've been around Arlington for decades. And I'm generously lumping myself in with all these other old guys. But a lot of them, and Elwin is awesome, but he's recent to the DC area, I forget, but lives in DC. And so doesn't have quite the skin in the game that some of us do. And some of these SPRC meetings, the whole Clarendon site plan calls for, this RB corridor is bullseyes, and suddenly it's a spine. And there's a real shift that seems to be happening because of county staff, urban planners having some change in mindset, and they don't seem to live in Arlington or haven't lived here that long. And I'm just wondering if I'm not saying I disagree necessarily, but I'm seeing some tension between the longtime residents, people that know the place, and the people that come in with new ideas and thinking about solving the housing crisis single-handedly and all these other issues. So your thoughts?
I was listening to most of it. See if I can reflect back what I heard, and you'll tell me if I got this wrong. Yeah. And since you work at Yorktown, you must be in the education field. You'll know that I was a student that didn't pay attention all the time. But you have people who, whether it's county staff or frankly even new residents who come in and have this. And I'm not saying this is true of the staff here, but sometimes have this idea of like they have book learning, in other words, and there's a way that they're going to approach things, and not enough of experience of getting on the ground and having talked to the users and doing that. That is something that is a challenge. I have found, I've worked in the county for 20 years. Before that, I worked in the federal government. I find that in lots of places. I have found it culturally in the county as an organization to be a challenge. Not, it's actually pretty good in comparison to some other organizations I've worked in, but it's always a sore point because people will sometimes, I'm not saying this is the case here, but they'll come with their bucket of, tricks that they think they have, and they want to apply them one place, and since it worked there, they're going to apply it the other place too, and it's completely wrong. It just doesn't take that into account. And I'll tell you what I think the answer to that is. And we haven't been able to do this because everybody's just so busy. And maybe this is something that BAC and PAC could do. Get together with our staff and don't talk to them about a specific project. Talk to them just generally about what it's like to live in the community and some of the challenges you face. And so, Cynthia, I'm getting a little bit sort of into your space here. I think when you get into talking about the specifics of the project, if you haven't built this rapport with staff so they understand what it is, as you said, all those old guys are dealing with and Lion Park, which is a little piece of paradise. Come on. That they sometimes, they will, it's not that they're not going to hear you, but if they haven't experienced it, it doesn't quite register with them. But again, they have the best of intentions. So, I think BAC and PAC should take the transportation staff out for karaoke night. But you know what I'm saying. I think there's a lot to what you said. But again, everybody's approaching it with good intentions. Some people on staff and some people in the community, sometimes they just don't know what they don't know.
Right. You're not seeing any, thanks for the response. It's useful. You're not seeing any particular tensions in the last couple of years because it feels like it's changed the last couple of years, but I haven't been around long enough to really get that sense.
Some of it comes with, I think, the tenure of our staff. Like, I think David Patton's been here for 4,000 years. That's just an approximate carbon dating, but so we have people with a lot of experience. But we have had some planners come in through the transportation funnel who've only stayed a year or two, and I think that's a little bit. Yeah, David, 17. Okay. That's been a little bit disconcerting. So I get what you're saying. And, hopefully, and not everybody actually agrees with me when they say that working for the county is like the life's most awesome experience. So it's a challenge, but as long as we try to show a little bit of grace, you all can help bring staff along.
Yeah, no, it's a nice idea. I'll take everybody bowling or something. Axe throwing. There's one up near where Elwyn lives, I think, right?
Well, actually, though, I understand the Barnes and Noble up in Clarendon is going to get redesigned, and they're going to have axe throwing right next to a place where they're going to be serving alcohol. So I think you just have it done in the right order.
Yeah, it's Three Notch Brewery. Their axe is their logo, so
yeah,
that makes the hatchet probably. But yeah.
All right, but thanks for warning me.
20 years for me in as a county staffer in Yorktown, so I think I'm got some of you beat on that.
Great. Well, I can't wait till the school's budget comes out tomorrow. Actually, I can, but whatever.
Yeah, we're not panicked at all.
And for the record, I prefer karaoke over axe throwing.
Karaoke and axe throwing. Ellen, that's a great idea.
I'm bad at both, so whatever. Yeah.
I think Mike Hanna has his hand up next.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Mark, for coming. Couple of things. I'm on BAC, by the way. So a few things. I'd like to have you comment a little bit on maintenance. I really felt like the county was trying to preserve as much snow as they could in the bike lanes. There was no snow on the grass, no snow on the sidewalks. Snow was nowhere else except piled in the protected bike lanes, especially on Wilson. So I don't know if you're trying to save it for summer or what was happened, but it is finally gone. So what the maintenance process is for bike lanes. I do think there's a couple of art drivers that are trying to kill me specifically. That's something else that we probably need to discuss. I don't have as much trouble with Metrobus. They seem to have less desire to kill bikers than our art drivers. But the main thing I want to talk about, though, I kind of follow up on what you were saying, which is more of a policy, more of a directional kind of engagement from us. And there are several opportunities, obviously, when we have the opportunity to do that, right? Which, like the current redo of the transportation plan, when we were doing the bike element before, we're definitely being engaged on the policy level. But outside of that, it's hard to know how to engage that if staff isn't already kind of working on a policy level. They're busy with other things. And sometimes I feel like if our only way is if we come up with an idea to send a letter to you, that kind of, I realize that's just sort of this thing that kind of disappears out there. You may respond, but your staff isn't necessarily going to change direction because we sent a letter to you. So a little bit more thought about how we can engage on the strategic level.
Yeah, Mike, I have a thought on that, Mike.
Yeah.
And I actually think this is a good exchange that we're having here with the members of the PAC and BAC, and Elwin's here and David's here. I've done this in the past. I have to plan for it, but if we could figure out a time where we can't do it all that often, but where you all get together and all the transportation staff comes together and I'm there and we just have an evening where we sit around and we pick a couple of sort of broad topics to talk about and sort of have this kind of interchange. You know, one of the things is we're taping this, but frankly, our staff is so busy, I'm not sure how much they'll hear or how much, there's some members of the groups that are missing. I'd be happy to do that. And actually pick some specific topics in advance. The other thing is, and I don't want you to underestimate the degree, because this happens much more than you would think. Our staff doesn't have the time sometimes to know what's going on in other places around the country. Even though they went to school and they did a lot of studying or whatever, their heads down a lot of time. And if you all can act as radar and sort of pick up on concepts and ideas that are helping in other places, I get it from lots of other advisory groups in the county. They stick with me because I'm an idiot. I mean, I'm not like an idiot, but I don't know anything. And if I know, for example, this stuff about how to do traffic enforcement with cameras, that's not my idea. Somebody sent it to me, and it's sort of like I've been beating up staff on this for the last few years. It's made a difference. So I don't want you to underestimate the degree to which, I mean, if you send me something about how at, 4 Mile Run and down in Shirlington in front of the Weenie Beanie, you've sent me lots of complicated letters about what was wrong with the sidewalk. I don't really know what to do with that because I'm going like, yeah, okay, maybe they're right. Maybe, I don't know what to do with that. But with the concepts of how we approach things, that is a place where is a sweet spot. So can I talk? I also wanted to talk to you a little bit about the snow removal, if you want to hear about that.
Yeah.
Yeah. My predecessor, Barbara Donnellan, always used to say, well, I don't know why everyone's so upset. It's all going to melt and go away. But the storm we had in January was, I've lived in the county for 40 years. It was a one of a kind in the sense that it snowed. The snow wasn't a huge amount of snow, but the temperatures afterwards were nasty. And so we do not have the equipment. We don't, to sort of take care of that ice that was afterwards. And I know that isn't what you brought up. That proved to be a real challenge. But on these bike lanes, we have a snow removal plan and concepts that were put together before a lot of these bike lanes existed. We have a couple of machines that go through the bike lanes, but I talked about this with the county board. Our first thing we're going to do is plow the roads. And what that does is dump snow into the bike lanes. And then we have, I won't use the adjective I want to use, but we have our sidewalk ordinance, which then has people go shovel snow off their sidewalks and throw it into the bike lanes. And then we come in and we try to clean the bike lanes. It's a little bit of a mess. And unless we have the weather cooperating, I'm not exactly sure I know what the answer is. I really don't, other than getting a lot more staff for those events that happen occasionally. So I'm open to suggestions on that if you have ideas. The other thing is we have a lot new infrastructure, these refuge spaces that we put in our roads. They don't appear on any county maps for our plow drivers. And we haven't really educated them on that. So I've asked them to go back to the extent they can when they do their training to let people know that there's these new kinds of infrastructure, because they do try to do that when they're driving. But I mean, did they do a good job on that? No. Was it intentional? No. I can't speak to bus drivers that want to kill you. I don't know anything about that.
All right. Thanks, Mark.
Sure.
This is Eric. Just want to follow up on that with regard to the snow issue. Just a brief thing on that. One thing I noticed, just like in the bike lanes, that plow drivers did move snow, and they moved a lot of it right up against the edge of the curb cuts. So, you know, the owners of the sidewalk are not responsible for the gutter pan. And the gutter pan was like filled with snow, sometimes mounds of it. And I think the worst thing that I saw was about a block from the Ballston Metro elevator. So for folks in wheelchairs, they had to go down a block, go to a driveway, cross to another driveway, and then come up a block.
I know.
Yes.
I was there. I saw it. Don't worry. I saw it. And it's like, yeah, I mean, there's a little bit that we can do with training on that. I think that would help, and also updating our maps. But, you know, I don't want to overpromise something. That was pretty bad. And there was also, I see Pam has her hand up, and I feel guilty talking because I want to hear from her. But we also have a lot of stretches in the we have a lot of stretches in the county. My least favorite stretch was along I don't know if it's called Langston Boulevard or if it's Cherry Hill Lane across from the school there, where VDOT has the responsibility for plowing, and they plow. VDOT doesn't know what a sidewalk is. You know, they don't take care of them. So that was a bit of a mess too. All right, Pam. By the way, Pam makes the best cookies in the world. Let's go.
Happy to share. It's one thing I miss about having very few in-person meetings, and we'd love to have more in-person meetings, but it's hard to find a site where we can also do recordings. The spaces are limited, as you know. Good to see you, Mark, and thank you for coming, and thank you for everything else you do. More on snow. The last snow was absolutely awful for pedestrians. The snow plowers pushed the snow onto the sidewalks at the intersections and into some of the crosswalks. And if you had any kind of hesitancy in walking, or if you had mobility issues, you just could not go anywhere. And of course, it stayed forever because it froze. It was a problem on our local streets. It was a problem in Pentagon City. But your model is Amazon. They did an amazing job of cleaning up the snow on their site right away. They had a whole team of people doing different things. The bike lanes were clear, the sidewalks were clear. So it is possible to do this. So talk to them.
Well, Pam, you thought those were people. I understand they're robots that were dressed up to look like people.
Robots would be great too.
No, you're right. We ran also, there was my least favorite anecdote was down at Pentagon City at the mall when it came to clearing some of the areas there right around the curb cuts and along the front of the mall. Oh my God, there was like a 3-day conversation about who owned whether it was a county sidewalk or whether it was owned by the fashion center, and our maps were out of date. And so even when the mistakes were made, we had a little bit of a problem going back and figuring out what the challenge was there. So point well taken. And, you know, we're going to try to do that. I'm just going to pray that we don't have that kind of storm again, but we'll have to see. And then I see that Andrew put in this thing about the snow removal ordinance. I would encourage you to go back and listen to all the comments I made at the county board meeting in January about the snow ordinance and how we enforce it. And we had a separate conversation about that. I'm not going to bore you all with the details there, but I happen to think the sidewalk ordinance was passed. It was passed after Snowmageddon in 2010. It's almost impossible for us to enforce it because we don't have the staff to do it. And I think it was really an ordinance that was passed where everybody was told to be a good neighbor. But I went on for about 20 minutes of this, so I'll stop now. You can go back and listen to that. Because we're running out of time and people still have their hands up.
Thank you. I see Cynthia is up next.
First, just to follow up that whatever the county does or doesn't do with regard to snow removal. For me, the key is knowing where we can go safely. Like if you don't plow it, or if you do plow, like if there's some way we could find out. I know that officially, like we have a website now and such, but I could not figure, I mean, during January, I had meetings in DC every single day, often on Capitol Hill. I found that I could go across Key Bridge safely, so and use the streets and avoid all bike lanes and only take roads and bus lanes. That worked. So I used my one method for every single meeting every day, even if it took me 2 hours to get to Capitol Hill. Not knowing sort of what parts of Arlington are actually plowed, aside from, I mean, the roads were amazing, but even if we plow it, if we don't know that the lane is plowed, then it's not worth anything to
Right.
me.
I get that.
So
And I'm
yeah.
going to tell you, we have so many more bike lanes, which is good. The last time we had a major snowstorm like this was about, I think, was probably 6 years ago. And just the increase in infrastructure, it's a challenge. But again, if you have found another jurisdiction that has done a good job with some sort of approach to this, I'm all game on it. One thing I am not supportive of is doubling our staff for an event that happened once every 4 or 5 years. That can't be the answer, but I have a lot of faith in you, Cynthia, that you'll be able to come up with an answer.
Sure. I had a separate question on behalf of Dana, because I think he is now in the air. But he wanted, specifically, he asked me to bring up this matter of VDOT, Route 1, and all the issues that we included in the very lengthy letter we sent you 1 month ago. Whether the county is going to take a position, or where you're at on the VDOT study. Perhaps Pam might want to jump in here also.
Pam?
Oh, I was going to go
Sorry.
back to snow removal. I had another question on snow removal. And when I talked to Allison at the open house, she said that the county did not send a formal response this round, and they're waiting for the what is it, 4% plans, and find out which she expects will be this fall. So I assume the county will respond at that time, as will we again.
Right. Yeah, Cynthia, it's been a few months since I got a briefing on the Route 1 stuff, and frankly, if you asked me to repeat what I heard, I would probably get it confused with briefings I had before, my ongoing fascination with the Barnes dance, and I have all these things bouncing in my head. I can't say I really recall exactly what's going on, but that whole thing was thrown off course by the arena plans, and the poorly kept secret that whatever it is that happens, you have this big tension. And I think that VDOT is coming closer to being reasonable, but I don't think they're there yet. That's all I'll say. They got a ways to go.
Noreen had her hand up. I'm just wondering, did you have something that you wanted to add?
I do.
Okay. Okay. Pam, go ahead.
Yeah, back to sidewalks. And Mark, thank you very much for your support and comments on sidewalks. I totally support that. And I am the PAC rep on the advisory group, which you probably know. And this is a hot issue for me. I totally agree that how we do sidewalks, how we build them, how we design them, whether it's a commercial site or a residential site, needs to be changed. And I appreciate your support on that. It's going to be tough, but we need to fix it.
Yeah. I mean, I could give you an example. I don't know how many examples I have to give you, but I got, WETA, which is a project we worked really hard on keeping in the county. And they built this beautiful new studio. It's sort of a little gem down there, if any of you are interested to go on a tour. So I got a call from the CFO down there who said, there's some bricks outside our sidewalk that make it so really hard for our staff to walk up and down. So she called me and she said, can the county come and fix it? So I spent some time and I went back and somebody told me, oh, whoa, wait a second. WETA is responsible for fixing that because there was a site plan from 1982 that said they had to do that. And I said, really? I said, they didn't know that. There's been 10 CFOs and 10 people working that organization. They had no clue. So, I mean, you can all take me to court for this. We sent somebody down there for 10 minutes, cost us $20. We fixed it. I mean, that's just what we should do. But, when you're in Ballston and you're trying to walk down, along Wilson Boulevard and those sidewalks are in a mess, we can't just go ahead and do that. So we got to figure out how to fix that. And so I don't know. I think maybe if we all just ran up and down the sidewalks with metal plates on our head, it would work, but I don't know.
Thank you. I have one more thing, and then we're going to let you go because we're up against the time. We really appreciate your hour that you have given us. I do like that you had given us some examples of how you would like us to function to kind of help you. The only thing, and I think this was said a little bit by Mike Hanna, is just making certain that kind of gets conveyed down through staff to us. So when we have meetings, that they're productive meetings and that we're actually looking to help you become more educated on the various issues that you might be interested in.
I think that's important. And, I'm going to, ask David and Nelwyn. I know that I've had conversations with Allison and Valerie and, Hui and the whole team about what I was going to talk about here, make sure that they get a chance to listen to this. But look, when I said before I got the job for the county, I was on an advisory committee appointed by the board. Sometimes people can't help themselves and it's seen as they get into opposition, whether it's staff gets their back up because they've spent a lot of time working on something and they don't want to hear from residents, or residents feel like the staff doesn't have a clue because they don't live in the neighborhood. We've just got to get, that's people are going to feel things like that. If we can get past that, and I think we can, I think you work fairly well with staff, but we can take it to the next level. And I'm willing to come back and, do something in a less formal setting and see how things are going. But I hope this has been at least a start. I don't know, I'll call it a reset because I think that things were going pretty well. But I, again, wanted to wrap up by saying I really appreciate, Eric, you agreeing to be chair for life. That was really a breakthrough at the beginning that I felt very, very good about. And that thanks to you and Cynthia for all the work you're doing and everybody who's on both advisory committees. And, it's not a secret, but we get to do this all by teams because you're like the exception to the rule. We don't have to follow any of those silly rules about meeting in person. So this was very efficient. So I appreciate that.
But no cookies.
That's all right. Virtual cookies. I was eating them all meeting. So thank you very much, everybody. Eric, you're on mute.
Oh, sorry. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
We really appreciate your time, especially as budget season is coming and many, many pressures and other things. So thank you again.
Take care. All right. Bye-bye.
All right. All right. So should we hit the next item, which is on our master transportation plan? I think that would be Pam and Mike Hanna would be up for that.
Maybe, I guess Pam had that slide deck and David, you were gonna then drive.
Yes, I
And-
will. I got caught flat-footed there. Excuse me.
Yeah.
I have it. And my computer's not helping me. Oh, come on. You ever want a little window on your computer that has a handle so you can move it around? There we go. So, there we go. And I'm going to have to take the screen so I can show your slides. You should be seeing the slides.
Yep, very
but
small.
not in slideshow mode yet. Let me get
Right,
there.
getting there.
There we go.
Very good, and you can go right to the next slide.
Okay. Let's see how we do that. There we go.
Okay, a very brief agenda. Mainly tonight we are going to discuss the draft vision statements and goals. And the questions that we have been given are, does the draft reflect our understanding of shared Arlington priorities? Do the vision statement and goals reflect a clear and aspirational future and backpack vision? What are the missing priorities? And if we have time later, we'll talk about upcoming public engagements and next steps. Next slide.
Okay.
Okay. Can you read the draft vision statement? And I hope that all of you have reviewed these materials ahead of time. So I'll read this out loud. It's fairly short. Arlington's transportation network enables people of all backgrounds and abilities to move safely, comfortably, and seamlessly. Everyone can depend on a variety of transportation options to get them where they need to go when they need to be there. Arlington focuses on making travel a good experience for people, connecting them with nature, friends, family, and jobs. This is not what we expected at all. It's not transformative. It doesn't talk about mobility. It's not people-centric. It doesn't prioritize cars or non-cars, and there's no future-proofing. And this is supposed to last us until 2050, I think, and it's not there. I thought it was a bit long. A lot of their text, I think, is too long for the goals too. It's very much about the status quo. It focuses on the physical infrastructure rather on kind of policies and where we should be going. It's not future-proofed. It's not innovative, not people-centric, not transformative, which was the big word that we had. I think the key concept that should be there is move more people with less traffic, which is one of the existing MTP goals. But I think that's what we're really all about. And we might want to add some other language with that. And the importance of giving people transportation choices. It doesn't really talk about choices here. It says, you know, there's stuff to get them where they need to go, but not necessarily that they want to take them. One of the other key concepts brought up by other groups is meet people where they are. And it doesn't talk about that either. So I think that we should agree that this needs rewriting. And we shouldn't rewrite the whole text, but we should talk about the concepts that need to be in there. And those are the concepts that I think should be in there. And I assume David Ansell's hand is not really up for this. Eric, you have a comment?
Yeah, so I do, I guess, I think we should focus on maybe one or two specific things. I mean, I see that it does say that a variety of transportation options to get them where they need to go. That is kind of the same as choices in my mind. But I think what you pointed out, which we probably want to help them with examples of, is being more transformative. So I think that's, if that was one thing that I think that in my mind that we should concentrate on, it would be that, and it maybe kind of give them some feedback or guidance associated with that. That's my opinion.
Thank you. I agree. I think one thing that I went to the open house, and what a lot of people commented on was the first sentence. That just really doesn't say much of anything. And again, it specifically is not transformative. So if people have suggestions on how to talk about transformative, that would be good. Other people want to have suggestions, comments at this point? Mike, do you have comments on this?
Yeah, I mean, I do. I would kind of let's see if others do. I mean, my biggest concern, I raised this at the other meeting, was, I mean, supposedly we're entering an environmental crisis, existential. The board just voted on a decarbonization strategy. This is a major push, and there's no mention of anything about that here. I mean, I think this needs to say we need to greatly reduce dependency on vehicles and significantly reduce the energy inputs into our transportation system. That has to be a critical factor. I will say this will stand up to the test of time. I mean, this could have been written in 1890 or 1790, and it'll be just as applicable in 2090. So in that way, it is somewhat timeless. But I think it's not facing the fact that we have to make a transformative change in the way we do transportation. And this plan needs to get us there. And with this vision statement, it won't.
Thank you. Cynthia?
Hi, I'm just curious where this statement comes from. Like, I understand that staff wrote it, but why would they write this? And what were they basing it or claiming to base it on? And whatever happened to the goals that we submitted, which I thought were brilliant, and ought to be the basis then for the vision, but they have nothing to do with this draft vision. So I'm just sort of curious how this came about.
I think, and sorry to kind of jump in, I think what they did is they polled a whole lot of people, a whole lot of folks, and they kind of put it in the Mashometer and put it all together, and these are the things that rose to the top in some ways. That's kind of the way they sort of were explaining it, because they were saying, I mean, when you get to each of the goals, underlying goals, they kind of showed like, okay, these 5 different areas had input on this, and these 4 areas, and so on. So that's kind of the sense I got. Maybe I'm wrong, but
No, I think you're right. That was my sense as well. They were trying to incorporate everything they heard into one thing, and it just watered it down to the point where no one could object to this.
Except we are.
Well, we are, but I mean, there's nothing in here we disagree with. Let's.
No, but it's not where we want to go. It's not where we want to
Yeah.
be. So we will work
Well,
on it.
do we want to maybe as maybe a force of 2 of maybe 2 voices? Certainly there's like 17 groups or something like that that are involved with this, to maybe come up with, again, 2 or 3 things, just like we were talking about. Sustainability is not really mentioned in here, and especially as it refers to energy. So those, do we have like maybe 3 or 4 things? And this is where I think we should open it up to other folks that are here that are to see what their thoughts are. But do we have some other kind of wording that we may want to send back that kind of provides examples of what we're trying to convey?
You guys want to put the goals up on the screen too, so we can kind of contextualize with the goals as well as the vision?
And then go back to
Yeah.
vision statement. Okay.
Well, they're supposed to be connected, right?
Yeah. I have easier time dealing with the goals and with the vision statement. But I thought I'd start with that. Yeah. So these, yeah, we can go back. We can go to start attacking goals.
Okay.
So these, the advisory group members were told as our second assignment to draft goals. We could choose up to 6 goals, and they would be a topic and then a brief description. And so staff combined what the advisory group people recommended and what they gathered at all their public engagements, and comparing existing county guidelines, etc., and tossing them all together. And this is what they came up with. Safe, equitable, and inclusive, sustainable, connected, livable, transparent, and accountable. Some of these are similar to what the PAC submitted, but not quite. We can go through these one at a time. I will say right away, I want to combine sustainable and livable. I think there's a huge overlap with that, and the guiding principle is healthy. It's for healthy individuals, healthy community, healthy environment, healthy business, and it would be sustainable and all those other good things. And that frees up another one, and I would create desirable. There's nothing in anything that they say that says people should want to use the transportation we're offering. And I think that's something that we should really push for. It's like, oh, I got to take the bus. Oh, I got to ride on a rotten bike lane. You know, it should all be good stuff. So, all right, let's start with next slide, please. Okay, these were the goals that PAC submitted, and you can see they're somewhat similar: safe, healthy, transformative, transparent, engaged, empowering, evidence-based, comprehensive, intuitive, delightful, desirable, inclusive, equitable, and accessible. And if you go to the next slide, these are the BAC goals. Mike, if you want to talk about these for a second.
Yeah, I mean, we tried to simplify it really down to 3: transformative, safe, and delivered. And we brought in the 2 kind of new concepts that we're not seeing in the others. One is, and there's a little bit in some of the detailed goals, but you know, the whole idea that it needs to be transformative, that we can't just be tweaking around the edges with what we've got. We've got to make some significant changes. Safe is always going to be, and it's going to be in everybody's goals. We all want them to be safe. I think we brought up more specifics in ours around intersections and transitions, and then the other one we brought in was delivered. Now there is I think a description of one of their goals that talks a little bit about this, but this was basically, we can't just have a plan. The plan has to have a way to implement it that's somewhat certain. So that was kind of the direction we were heading in.
Okay, thank you. Next slide, please. I think. Oh, and these were general themes from all the advisory groups: comprehensive, delivered, healthy, inclusive, people-centric, and safety. And staff decided not to use the term people-centric because people didn't know what it meant. They didn't want to use mobility because that has accessibility connotations. So that flavored some of their responses. So next slide. So the first one is safe. Prioritize safety for all people and eliminate transportation-related deaths and serious injuries. I'm basically okay with this, but I would add a new sentence at the beginning. Create a transportation system that is safe and feels safe. And I think it's important to list both, because it needs to both be safe and is safe. And a lot of times it's not. So that's the only change that I would make to this one. Any comments on this one?
How about we introduce the concept that it be safe for the most vulnerable road users?
It says all people, yeah.
Well,
yeah.
I mean, it's going to be safe for drivers because cars are incredibly safe these days, relatively speaking. But I feel like we have to sort of emphasize the priority that it has to be safe for the weakest, for the most vulnerable,
Right.
for the.
I think that's encompassed in the all. All. It does say all. And I don't think we need to call out that some all are more important than other all.
Except that it's the most vulnerable that are most at risk and are most often ignored. Our needs are not being met.
Well, I mean, that's true, but is this statement somehow missing something by saying all?
I think
Safe is in
calling
there
it out
now.
explicitly means it's not going to be left out. I mean, it's
Well,
a Black Lives Matter issue, right?
well,
You
Exactly.
got to say it. You got to say it, or it's not going to be focused on.
I would also
So-
note that this goal could be accomplished by just encouraging everyone to drive. If people were just in their cars and not on the sidewalks, we wouldn't have these problems. So I mean, I think it needs to be a little stronger that safety needs to not only keep everyone safe, but safe and encouraging them to do things outside their car.
Can sorry, I just want to sort of ask something. I know a couple, 2 or 3 meetings ago when we were sort of pulling some of these together, the word safe systems approach came up, and I see that's in both of our goals. And it seems to me, I'm looking back at the definition of that, and it pretty much says acknowledging that human error is inevitable and aiming to design systems that accommodate mistakes and minimize harm. Is that one of the things that we would agree as a group is a transformative way of looking at things? In addition to, I guess, some of the energy reduction that wasn't mentioned here, but is that something that we might want to push back on with that, or do you think that's kind of a specific concept of the department, I guess the Department of Transportation, and we shouldn't really go there? I just want to get folks' thoughts.
You know, I looked at that when I was reviewing things, and a lot of things on the PAC list, I think, are going to come up when we get into more specific priorities and details on how to do the plan. And I think the safe systems approach would be mentioned there. I think this one could be fairly general, but I do like Cynthia's suggestion about somehow putting in the most vulnerable.
Okay.
And of course, we don't have to decide right now. We're just having a general.
The reason why I'm sort of saying that, and I don't know, do we talk about design here? Actually, in any of these, do we focus on design to keep, as opposed, you can educate people. There's a lot of things that you can do. Engineering certainly is one of the E's, and design is a way to potentially, by how you build it, can make a huge difference on getting to the point where you're reducing those deaths and serious injuries.
Yeah, there's like nothing at that level in any of this. No, it's very general. And I think those kind of details will come up later, for better or for worse. We can suggest putting in safe systems, though.
Or even just if we want to step away from that as a buzzword, we could just say, to get to where we need to as well, is we really focusing on design is certainly another way to get us there. Creating a something that's designed for safety to begin with. Otherwise, we end up having bad behaviors that cause a lot of these injuries.
Right. Okay. Well, we can think about that. I still want to have a first sentence that says, create a system that is safe and feels safe, because I think that's an important first concept. And then the second sentence can be massaged to include some of the other things we're talking about, or not. Since we're talking about making changes, what I want to do is compile. I don't know if we're going to be able to do one document or two documents. Certainly we will share documents as we go along. We may end up with two slightly different documents, which is fine. I am going to try to compile thoughts in the next couple of days and certainly send it out to PAC members and to Cynthia and Mike and get feedback from everybody and continue. The county staff want our comments back by March 31st. And the next advisory group meeting, when we'll discuss all this, is April 10th. And I will announce now that I cannot go to that meeting. So I will need another PAC representative to go to that meeting. So it's Thursday, April 10th. And I have another obligation that my husband will kill me if I don't go to.
I don't know if Mr. Malpelli would be able to do that. I think he was a potential alternate.
Yeah. Oh, we don't have to decide now, but I will be looking for somebody. And I think we've talked about safe enough. And safe was the easy one. Okay, let's see. And I have comments on the top on what I thought about these things as I went through them. Next slide, please, David. Thank you. Equitable and inclusive. And I think this one is not too bad. What we had was the PAC was inclusive, equitable, and accessible. And they talk about accessible when in the sentences, but they don't have it in the title. And do we think equitable and inclusive is sufficient to cover accessible issues too? Question mark. It's also a bit long, but probably, I'm actually fine with a sentence until it gets to all backgrounds and abilities. And then it has, while working to eliminate historical disparities in transportation policy and investment. Does that need to be in this goal? I mean, it's true, but it doesn't need to be in the goal.
It depends if you want federal funding these days, I guess.
Oh, that's a good point. Unfortunately.
Yeah, I don't necessarily have an issue with it. I think it's fine. I'd rather save our energy for places where we really want to make an impact. And
yeah.
Yeah.
I agree. Okay. Next is next slide. Next slide, David. Okay. This is the one I want to combine with livable. There's good information here. Not all of it is literally environmental sustainability. The first sentence, develop a transportation system that moves more people without more traffic. That needs to be the first sentence in the vision statement. I strongly believe that. It doesn't belong here.
Yeah, this is the one I had the most issue with because, it reduces environmental impacts and supports climate resilience is sort of nested down in here as just another nice thing we could do. And climate resilience could mean it could actually have more to do with better stormwater management than actually reducing greenhouse gas impacts. So I agree. I think that whole chunk, and I would say develop this transportation system move more people without more traffic and with less energy inputs. And we need to be clear with it.
Perfect. Okay.
Yeah.
And
that needs to
that
be
is the first sentence of the vision statement.
Vision statement. Yeah, that's what I would
good.
go
With less traffic and less energy.
Less energy inputs. Yeah.
Sure.
Thank you. Perfect. Perfect. Okay. Continue. We may need to come back to this slide for some of the other things, but connected. Let's see. Sorry. Okay, the PAC, called this comprehensive. Connected was part of it, but I'm okay with connected. I would change the first sentence to provide a comprehensive, integrated, interconnected transportation network that is intuitive, dependable, affordable, and well-maintained. Does that work? And then continue. I like the enabling people and goals to seamlessly reach these destinations. I think that's good. But it's missing comprehensive and all those other words that I just threw in.
I'm good with that.
Any comments?
Just got a thumbs up from Steve.
Oh, that's good. Thank you, Steve. Yay, Steve. All right. If we're in agreement with that, basically, let's go on to the next one. Livable. This is the one that I want to combine with sustainable and make it healthy. And I would delete what's here. And it should be create a transportation system that supports healthy individuals, healthy communities, a healthy environment, and healthy businesses. The transportation system will support climate resilience, sustainability, and vitality.
Can we bring in the concept of active transportation?
If you have a suggestion on how to specifically do that, of course that supports all of those. So it will, so that maybe transportation system will support, active transportation will be in there somewhere at the end. Yes?
Can we say prioritizes active transportation?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm concerned that the staff's going to come back and say nobody knows what active transportation is, so we may need to find a more accessible
Spell it
word for
out.
that.
Walking,
Yeah.
biking, transit?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, that's active versus alternative. So do we want to include transit with it, or just do biking and walking and scooting? Again, you can think about that, but we can certainly insert that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, on to the next one. Next goal. Okay, this needs a lot of work, and I'm going to need a lot of help on this. This is where transformative is supposed to be.
Yeah.
This is how we want staff to be doing transportation policies, transportation development, transportation projects.
Right. This is kind of where delivered should be, where we had delivered on the other one, on our goal.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Let's see. I have rewrite entire text. Also emphasize, one of the things that we have in the PAC one is engaged and empowered public and evidence-based. There's nothing, I really, really dislike the language here. Including addresses community priorities. As we discussed with Mark, not all transportation projects, if they prioritize community priorities, they're not going to meet our needs and vice versa. So that needs to be reworked. You cannot just be community priorities. It has to include all relevant groups.
So you're reading community as neighborhood priorities, really?
Yeah. Probably okay that they acknowledge trade-offs and building public trust through exceptional stewardship of resources. Yeah.
Yeah, some of that sounds like we're not going to spend any money on this.
I would like a lot of help rewriting this, suggested visions for this, because I think it needs work. But definitely the first thing is transformative.
So I have a question about if potentially we could talk about this in here. One thing that would make projects more successful is also coordination within the county government. So you don't have conflicting projects, conflicting priorities. So I think since this is a master plan, I think it should also maybe address county government in terms of making certain that when a project is done, that all the entities are aware and it is coordinated.
That's a good suggestion. Okay. I don't have any other specific suggestions other than transformative, but I think this needs a lot of work before we get back. And this is actually the final goal. And because we have combined two of the goals, I want to add a new goal, which is desirable. And I have build a transportation system that people will want to use. Comfortable, affordable, accessible, delightful, easy, and intuitive. Anybody okay with that? Comments?
Yeah, I think I'm all right with it.
Okay. Do we want to go back to the vision statement now and see if we have any other comments on it right now? Keep going back, hit, gap, stop. Minimally, the first sentence has to go away and it's replaced by move more people with less traffic and what was that about?
Less energy input.
Energy input, yeah.
Or we could make it more less carbon, less greenhouse gases, something like that. But
Yeah,
maybe,
yeah. Less energy input's good, yeah.
Would you say more efficiently? That would say less vehicles and less energy.
We
yeah,
definitely want less vehicles, and I like having the less energy input too.
yeah. I don't want to be too vague about it. Efficiently could be, oh, okay, we're going to spend less money on paving every year or something. You know,
Yeah.
we want to be very specific.
Or more efficient cars.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, we definitely
Sure.
want about the less traffic in there. Oh, we're all going to strangle in traffic or get killed. I think the rest of it, or the second sentence is not bad.
Yeah.
We can, the final sentence is travel a great experience. We don't got a good experience, but a great experience. But the main thing is I would delete the first sentence and with the suggestions that people had. So if people are okay, I'm going to send out my suggestions in the next couple of days. I'll send it to all the PAC and I'll send it to Cynthia and to Mike and we'll go from there. Anything else that anybody wants to say about this?
Just, I mean, I will send out a separate thing to BAC.
Yeah.
Maybe it'll probably be very similar to what Pam does, but we've got to do our own submittal. So I may tweak it a little bit and then I need BAC input.
Yeah.
And like she said, we need to get it back to them by the 31st. So I'll try to get something out by sometime next week and then give you guys a week to review and comment.
Right. Thank you. Yeah.
So
I think sorry, Cynthia.
I'm just still looking. I'm very bad at thinking sort of on the screen in the moment, but
Me too.
yeah, but if we're swapping out that first sentence, which I think is a great idea, I'm thinking that the second sentence should be about safety.
Mm-hmm.
And not a variety of options to get where you need to go. So I think we need to switch more of theirs out.
Include. Okay.
Because we're losing their reference to safety in the first.
Yep. Some of it's okay, but yeah, starting with, we'll see what happens when we add the new sentence. Maybe the rest of it can stay. Except for great, for good. We have time to play with this. But I think this has been a really helpful discussion and I thank everybody for their comments. Anything else that anybody wants to say? Going once, going twice.
Want them out.
Okay, I think we're done. Thank you all for your work on this and useful conversation and ideas. Very helpful.
Well, we're in the last 15 minutes of the meeting here. Do we want to go over some of the things, I guess the announcements in business at this point?
Yeah, and if Mary Delau wants to say anything,
Yes.
if we didn't put her on the agenda. You want to start with Mary?
Yes.
Get my microphone on. So I don't have any enormous announcements. Just as Pam said, we have a walk coming up on April 5th with the Vision Zero program. And that is, we're walking from Courthouse to Roslyn, and it'll be led by Christine Baker. It's a Saturday morning, 10 to 11:30. And those are always fun and well attended. And I did put it out in the Google group. So if anybody, I think Eric's coming and Pam, so whoever's interested, it should be fun. And then another thing I wanted to mention is that we're having the proclamations read again this year for Bike Month and Walk Month. And I can put this in the listserv because last year I tried to get a decent group of people to come to receive the proclamation. We didn't get a lot of notice for the walk proclamation, so I wasn't able to give people enough time to plan. But I think it makes a statement to have a nice big group there at the board meeting to hear a proclamation read that says that we prioritize these active modes, and then we go up and receive it from the board and have a picture taken. So I wanted to mention that to everybody. The walk proclamation will be read on Wednesday, April 9th at 3. And the bike proclamation will be read on Tuesday, May 13th, also at 3. And I realize everybody works and is busy, and it may not be convenient to come to courthouse, but I'll put it out in the Google group, and if anyone can come, I think it would be a nice thing to do together. And I invited the pals and maybe some others, like I've invited Phoenix before, so just
Could you
try to
repeat
get some.
the date and the time?
So the walk proclamation is on April 9th. That's a Wednesday at 3:00.
Mm-hmm.
And then the bike is on May 13th. So just a couple days before Bike to Work Day. That's on the 15th. And it's also at 3. So those are the main things. And I don't know if Lauren's still on. Oh, she is there. So and not to put you on the spot, Lauren, but do you have anything to report on with Bike to Work Day? They had the steering committee meeting today. I know she was in that earlier.
Yeah, Bike to Work Day is Thursday, May 15th, Thursday, not Friday, Thursday. And the committee meeting was today, and the second to the last one will be the week before Bike to Work Day. But really, we're in good shape. We've got 8 pit stops in Arlington, including the 3 that Bike Arlington's running at Ballston, Roslyn, and Shirlington. And our goal is to get 2025 people registered for 2025. So you can register now, it's open, and tell your friends and neighbors. And if anyone wants to guess what the t-shirt color is, I can entertain 2 guesses because of the clock. Anyone want to guess?
I won't because I know.
Yeah, Mary
That would
knows.
be
Mary,
fair.
you're out.
I'm going
All
for
right.
transparent.
All right, I'm not going to tell then. If no one's going to guess,
Blue.
I'm not telling. Good guess. Good guess.
How about avocado green?
Oh, no. Your Pam is in the closer range, but it starts with an R and it has 1 syllable. But that's all I have to say.
Red?
But it's yeah, and if you go, it's red. Exactly, it's red.
Rose.
Red rose. It's a bold red for a bold new era, and we're If you are interested in registering, everything is on the bikearlington.com website. And if you go to the events page, you can go automatically to the registration on the COG website. So thank you for your time.
Oh, and another thing I can throw in there, I forgot to mention this. I'm giving a presentation for the 55 plus program on Tuesday at Arlington Mill about e-bikes. And it was just an idea I came up with the person who was in charge of that program. And I have 20 people signed up, lo and behold. And I had no idea. Like, to me, I'm pretty excited about that because I didn't know if people would be interested, or we were just trying, like, what could we do? So I'm really looking forward to that because I think this is a great audience, and it's just going to be, it'll really be messaging that's already in our e-bike buying guide, just turned into a PowerPoint, but talking about how to buy an e-bike, why you would want one, like just really basic. And then about Capital Bike Share, if you don't want to buy one or use any of the other bikes around, and even then talking about trikes or recumbents. There are a lot of things we can talk about. So I'll be very excited to do this and also curious to see like the kinds of questions I get and if we can do this again, like maybe go to Walter Reed or kind of get out there and talk to more groups about this topic. So that's another thing coming up.
Thank you so much, Mary. I guess before we go through some of the things at the end here, David Patton, do you have anything you would like to add?
No, I'm good, Eric. I have a busy week, very much on the ground doing field work, and then I might see some of you out on the trails next week. I'm doing our annual maintenance visit for the counter network, and so the technician fellow from Montreal comes down, and we spend an entire week going around and visiting all the counter sites. Maybe I'll see Randy out there or Dana or some of you folks who are on the trails a lot, and then we'll have the effort is to get all the counters working well, at least once a year. And then they all catch various bugs and stuff, but we're in pretty good shape. And that's a big part of what I'm doing. And then another field trip with a different colleague on Friday this week. And then tomorrow night at the open house for the Arlington's Transportation Future Plan at the Walter Reed Community Center. And I just really thank you folks for digging into the wordsmithing of these slides and the foundational premises of this whole plan. It's a big deal, and it really helps to put attention in the early stages and get the wording right. And so, and what you all are saying about getting the concepts leveled up, so you're not dealing with minor stuff. You're dealing with big meaty stuff at the beginning.
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you. And Elwyn, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, in the announcements, it says that Langston Boulevard study, that the comments are due today, but they've actually extended it to the March 19th.
Oh, yay!
So, yeah, I've not another week.
Oh, good. I haven't had time. Thank you, Elwyn. That's a great announcement.
Yeah,
There was a walkabout yesterday with the VDOT and county staff people. I didn't go on it, but I think it was a very productive meeting.
What county staff? DPR or DES or all the above?
DES folks. Yeah.
Yeah, we also had VDOT and their consultant out there as well.
Okay.
So we walked the full route.
Did you go, Elwyn?
Yeah, I was there.
Oh, you'll have to give us a report. What did people say?
Yeah, it was some folks from VDOT. That was the first time they've been out there to see some of the projects in person. A lot of construction, of course, the new towers going up along Langston Boulevard eastbound, but then there's a lot of construction in terms of new, water projects and what have you. So it's pretty noisy. Obviously, the cars make it pretty noisy out there, but really happy to have VDOT staff out there see things in person.
Yeah, okay. I'm glad you were there. Can I make a couple announcements?
Sure.
Okay, David mentioned the open house tomorrow at Walter Reed Recreation Center. If there's any chance that you can go, the open houses are the best public engagement for the transportation plan. And it is, I think, probably late afternoon to early evening, and it's at the Walter Reed Recreation Center. The only other pop-up event that's still on the list is this Saturday. They will be at the National Landing Water Park. And I think that is like 3 in the afternoon or something. Other than that, there's an online engagement, and I will send out links for that. And everybody should complete the online engagement for the transportation form too. And thank you again for all your feedback on this. It is, I agree that it is so important that we get this right now. It's got to be transformative. It's got to somehow stress active transportation and all that other good stuff. Or otherwise, why are we doing this? Thank you.
All right, and there are, I guess, a few items that were listed in the announcements in the agenda. I guess those are pages for people. Well, there are links in those to go to pages for some of these things, or maybe all of them, right? Like the Walter Reed Complete Streets, Fairfax and Kirkwood intersection, and
I think those are all
South
active links.
Okay, those are all active
It's
links.
certainly not the totality of projects, but it's all of the projects that are listed there are active links.
Is the South Irving Street, I should know this, but is that part of the neighborhood Complete Streets?
Hey, as a resident of that neighborhood, I can say yes, it is.
Okay. Okay.
Or it's the neighborhood, I think, solicited that project.
Okay.
But yeah, that's part of the kind of the routes between like TJ and down to the Career Center.
Great. Thank you. I don't know if we have any option do we have enough people on here to approve minutes? Nope.
No, we lost
before.
we lost Andrea and Eric Malpelli.
Okay.
We had a nice quorum, but now we don't. We can do it next
Okay.
time.
Okay. Well, I don't have anything more to add, and but I think it was a very good discussion with the county manager. I think he was able to a certain extent, answer our questions and provide maybe a little bit more feedback on what he's looking for from us. I think I've said it a couple times in the meeting. It would be good to have that filter down to staff, that so as we kind of engage with staff, that there are some priorities that the manager would like us to review and provide feedback on. So, anybody else have anything they want to announce or say before we leave a few minutes early?
I'll
just note that the next BAC meeting will be Monday, April 7th, our normal first Monday. May is TBD given various people's schedules, but April we should be on a regular plan.
And is that going to include underride guards?
I am very much hoping so. Elwyn, do we know any more? Is that on the agenda? Do you know if we can do vehicular safety in April?
Yeah, I still haven't heard back from them, but I definitely need to follow up with them. I reached out to them last week, so I should follow up.
Great, thank you.
I do have one thing to add on the topic of meetings, future meetings. PAC folks asked me to ask whether the PAC can have a walk-in meeting that would not be under the same requirements to have a hybrid option, and the answer was yes. So I bet that would apply to the BAC as well. Because these are committees, and Mr. Schwartz mentioned this too, because these are committees, the same rules don't apply that require hybrid or in-person meetings for every meeting. So that opens up the possibility of having site visits, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I don't think you can go hog wild and do it every time. But that was a very positive outcome. I heard back from Sarah Tracy, who works in the manager's office as the the overseer of all the commissions and committees. So that was good news.
And we will want to do that for Gateway Park with relevant staff sometime this summer, I
Yeah.
guess.
So
Yeah.
I just, and cookies, right? And just be,
I will bring
thinking-
cookies,
be
absolutely.
thinking about the right time and place and weather for such a thing.
Steve Offit, I believe, has his hand up.
Yeah, I'd just like to express my opinion that I would really love to have an in-person meeting. I like it better than this. So if next month we were able to obtain a room and get together in person, I'm all for it.
Just to provide a little context, it's really hard to find a room, Steve. We did it once a year ago at the Aquatic Center. It's hard. It's hard to find a room.
Yeah, I mean, I do wonder, like, is that because we wait too long? Like, if we were to look for a room now for, say, our October meeting, could we
That's
get one?
possible. Yeah, 6 or
So,
7 months.
why do we wait until the month before? Why not now think about all the meetings for next year, see when we might be able to get meeting rooms and say, okay, so November and February, we'll do them in person.
So let's have a list of
I mean,
meetings.
who would do that? Who would take the lead on that?
Elvin and I can reserve rooms, but there's a
Yeah.
very limited number of rooms available. So we
Okay,
need a
no,
lot
I
of lead
understand
time.
that maybe April won't be available. But
April,
why don't you,
I can
why don't you
guarantee
just
you
get one?
April
Why don't you
will
get
not
one
be.
now for June or something? I mean, just do it. Like get ahead of the game.
I'll just mention,
Because you can
Steve,
always cancel it, right? If you can get it now, like you can reserve the rooms now for 2026, right? Or it's I don't know how far ahead you can reserve them. And then if for whatever reason we say, nah, forget it, we can cancel. But it's harder to go the other way. So I'd suggest, why don't Elwin and you look out into the future and go ahead and secure some rooms now, and we can talk about it at the next meeting about whether or not we want to take advantage of having those rooms.
I'll see what I can do. This has been very difficult. That's all I'm going to say. But I can see.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's not, but it doesn't sound like you've looked a year in advance.
I'm not going to say anymore.
I will just add one thing, which is that the amount of discussion and searching for available dates for these meetings has been incredibly challenging, and Elwin and David and Pam and Eric and everybody are like looking through all the county calendars and waiting, and various committees and commissions don't schedule their meetings ahead of time, like Arlington's Transportation Future. So it gets, I mean, even figuring out when the heck we can meet is really, really challenging and involves so many discussions and emails and searching different calendars.
But truthfully,
I'm not saying,
I don't think that goes against the idea of reserving some rooms now.
yeah,
8
it's
or 10
possible.
or 12 months in advance, because we can always cancel them. Like
Steve,
we can always cancel them if those dates don't work.
You're not the first person to have thought of that.
I
Other
believe
people
you.
have reserved rooms and then the rooms become unavailable. Folks, I don't want to talk anymore about this.
Okay, that's fine.
Well, thank you everybody for all your participation today. I thought it was a good meeting. A lot of people spoke up about to the county manager, and I think we got a variety of responses. So I think that was very good. So enjoy the rest of your evening for everyone, and
All right.
thank you.
Thank you all.
Have a good night, everybody.
I look forward to all this
Thanks,
stuff,
everybody.
David.
Yep.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.